The place you see today is evidence of decisions you didn't witness. Some were made last week, others a century ago. Have you ever wondered why Pasadena feels like Pasadena? Not why it's beautiful, not why homes here cost what they cost. I mean, why this city specifically out of dozens of beautiful Southern California neighborhoods? I'm a property matchmaker here in the San Gabriel Valley, and I make these videos because the why behind a neighborhood usually explains its market better than any spreadsheet. One reason I like making these videos is that they force me to slow down. Drive through a neighborhood every day and eventually you stop seeing it. Take this building. It's officially called the Tournament House. Longtime Pasadena residents know it. A lot of visitors probably don't. Before it became the headquarters of the Tournament of Roses, this was the winter home of William Wrigley Jr, the chewing gum magnate, and his wife Ada. The mansion was completed in 1914, designed by architect G. Lawrence Stimson after Ada Wrigley died in 1958. The family didn't sell the estate. They gifted it to the city of Pasadena with the condition that it become the permanent home of the Tournament of Roses. Since 1959, that's exactly what it's been. Think about that. A private residence becomes connected permanently to one of the institutions most closely identified with Pasadena. That's not just a real estate transaction, that's a family choosing to attach an estate to an institution. And walking here made me wonder how many decisions like that, some famous, others made by people most of us have never heard of, quietly shaped the Pasadena we recognize today. Every city inherits history. Not every city agrees on what to do with it. Pasadena has preserved a lot of what it inherited. You see it in the architecture, the civic institutions, the historic neighborhoods, buildings that continue serving new generations long after the people who built them are gone. But preservation isn't automatically good simply because something is old. It has costs. And in California, preservation is part of a much larger conversation about zoning, housing supply, affordability, density, and development. Pasadena is wrestling with these questions too. How much should a city preserve? Where should it change? Where should more housing go? And who gets to make those decisions? I don't think those questions have simple answers. And I sure don't think everyone in Pasadena agrees on them. What interests me is the tension itself, because cities aren't finished objects. They're arguments that keep getting revised. While we're asking questions, here's one I'd wondered about for years and never actually stopped to look up. Why do Pasadena and Altadena both end in Dena? The name Pasadena is usually traced to an Ojibwe or Chippewa phrase that has been passed down as meaning crown of the valley. The name was selected in the 1870s when the community's founders were looking for something more distinctive than Indiana colony. The precise story of how the phrase reached them has been told in slightly different ways, so I wouldn't treat every version of the story as settled fact, but the name stuck, and eventually it became inseparable from the identity of the city itself. Altadena came later. Its name combined Spanish alta, meaning upper or higher, with the Dena ending associated with Pasadena, fitting a community sitting immediately north of it. But I want to stop here for a moment because in 2026, I don't think I can talk casually about Altadena as an interesting piece of local wordplay and leave it there. In January 2025, the Eaton fire devastated the community. Thousands of homes were destroyed. 19 people lost their lives. And the fire hit a community with the important history of Black American home ownership in Southern California. More than a year later, recovery is still part of daily life for many families. So if you're from Altadena, I recognize that your community name carries considerably more weight right now than an interesting origin story. The shared Dena connects these neighboring communities linguistically, but their recent histories could hardly feel more different. And that's another reminder that understanding a place requires more than understanding its name. Once I started looking at Pasadena this way, I realized something. This city isn't defined by one landmark. It's defined by relationships. tournament house means something because of the Tournament of Roses. The Tournament of Roses means something because generations of people built an institution around it. And that's only one piece of Pasadena. Look around and you see architectural styles spanning generations. Historic neighborhoods that are still lived in, civic institutions that continue functioning instead of becoming museum pieces, commercial districts that have changed repeatedly while retaining traces of what came before. And that brings us back to real estate. People often ask me about Pasadena real estate. Usually the conversation starts with prices, but I think price is an outcome. It's the number produced by everything else happening around the property. Supply, demand, interest rates, condition, lot size, architecture, location, schools, commutes, neighborhood, and thousands of individual decisions made by buyers and sellers. Pasadena's median asking price is about $1.598 million. The median price of newly listed homes is about $1.25 million. And active single-family listings are asking about $873 per square foot. And just to be clear, I'm talking about single-family homes here, not condos or townhomes. Inventory stands at 129 homes. A median days on market is 49 days, and 29% of the active listings have had a price reduction. At the same time, Pasadena's market action index is 46, which classifies as a strong seller's market. At first, those numbers might seem contradictory. They're not. Demand can remain relatively strong while buyers still reject or negotiate on individual homes they believe are overpriced. That's an important distinction. A seller can ask a certain price. The market still has to respond. And this particular report gives us a detailed picture of what sellers are asking right now. But it doesn't give us a comparable median closed sale price for those same homes. So I'm not going to manufacture an apples to apples comparison that the data doesn't actually support. That's exactly why I don't like looking at a single number in isolation. A median asking price of nearly $1.6 billion doesn't mean every Pasadena house is worth $1.6 million. 49 days on market doesn't mean every house takes 49 days to sell. And a strong seller's market doesn't mean every seller gets the price they want. These numbers describe a market. They don't describe every house within it. So when someone asks me, how is the Pasadena housing market? I think the better question is, which Pasadena? And which kind of home are we talking about? So when somebody buys a house, they're not buying square footage alone. They're also choosing the community their life will unfold in. That's true in Pasadena, it's true in Alhambra, it's true in San Marino. For somebody trying to buy their first home, price may be the single biggest obstacle standing between them and the community where they want to live. For somebody who already owns here, the exact same number may represent decades of accumulated equity. Same stat, completely different meaning. That's why I'm interested in what sits underneath the number. Because a restored craftsman near Orange Grove, a condo close to Old Pasadena, and a mid-century home in the hills may attract different buyers, experience different levels of competition, and respond differently to the exact same economy. Citywide, averages are useful, but they should be the beginning of the conversation, not the end. This is where I think market stats become most useful, not because they can predict exactly what's going to happen next. They can't. Stats are useful because they help us ask better questions. If inventory is rising, why? If homes are taking longer to sell, which homes? If asking prices are changing, where? If price reductions are becoming more common, in which segments? If one Pasadena neighborhood remains highly competitive while another slows down, what's different? That's where understanding begins. Walking here, outside Tournament House, I don't think this building explains Pasadena. No single building could. But it does preserve evidence of one decision. A family could have sold this property. Instead, the estate became part of an institution. Elsewhere in Pasadena, completely different decisions were made. What got built? What didn't? What was preserved? What disappeared? Where roads went? where neighborhoods grew, where housing became denser, where it didn't. Some of those decisions probably look wise in hindsight. Others deserve scrutiny, and some we're still arguing about. That's what I find interesting about neighborhoods. The place you see today is evidence of decisions you didn't witness. Some were made last week, others a century ago. Most were made by people whose names we've forgotten. When I started making these videos, I thought I was mostly learning about real estate. I've realized I'm mostly learning about decisions. And that's one reason I don't think a headline like "prices are up," "prices are down," "buyer's market" or "seller's market" ever tells the whole story. Those statements aren't necessarily wrong, they're incomplete. Because before you can really understand the market, you have to understand the place. And I'm still figuring out Pasadena. So if you know this city better than I do, tell me what I'm missing. What should I investigate next? And which Southern California neighborhood have you always wondered about, but never stopped to ask why it became the place it is today? Tell me in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.